What is up, friends? Got here today, Zentangle number 16, ready to hit it back off. And man, there's some pretty cool ones. Thinking back to number 15 and kind of some of the floral things, and some of those elements kind of get repeated again. And pretty stoked to get on this. So as always, you're gonna need your journal or some paper to work on. You're gonna need a pencil. You're gonna need a black pen and possibly a black marker just to kind of get this going today. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into this one. As always, um, when you go to make your card, when you go to kind of set up your Zentangle, be sure you're giving yourself some space to kind of work in. I know a lot of times like we kind of deal with this square and kind of working in this square, but as we start to progress forward in creating these, um, don't don't be afraid to like allow yourself to kind of change those parameters up a bit and start thinking about how this might exist within that space, but also be something a little more interesting. You see here kind of a full square, but very much like playing with the outside borders here. And as we move to day 16, this little example is a really good example of that. And then there's some sneak peeks at next week's. I like how that rhymed. All right, so make sure you're giving yourself enough space. One issue a lot of people run into as they work on these is they work too small. And when you work too small, you really set yourself up to mess up because you need room to shade, to add value, to show those textures. All right, so yeah, our three patterns today, they're a little complex, kind of like last week's and the weeks before. But the first one makes total sense, and it's called Pepper. Um, and I love this one because it looks like it's a mint. Um, and I also like to think back, like way back to like day 3 of these. There was this kind of like white blood cell looking one. Festoon maybe was what it's called, and this very much has a similar shape to it. So uh, this is a pattern that you can repeat in any space, or you could draw it kind of large, like it's a fixture of its own. And I'm going to do that. One giant mint, if you will. So I'm starting by sketching my shape out I'm going to use. And for this shape, we want an oval. And I like to set this kind of middle, I don't know, partially curved line here in the center. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull lines from the center of this towards the edge. But as we get closer to the edge, we're going to make it a little wider, kind of like it has a base supporting it. And we're going to kind of create a cross contour when we do this. So if I start here, right, kind of a little thicker, almost like a tiger stripe or something. So kind of got a line here. I'm going to pull that line out just a smidge. Kind of get that in there. So we're kind of getting close to this inner oval. Actually, that's a good idea. If I draw it as an oval, I'll know not to mess with any of that area. But yeah, I'm just going for it here with the pen today. Kind of digging on it. Kind of turning my paper so it's more comfortable to kind of get these curves in with my hands. Some can be a little thicker, some can be a little thinner. Now, when we kind of cross over this area right here, this is where things get a little more tricky because we don't see that bottom edge anymore. So we kind of got to compensate a little bit. we don't want to like give up this profile look of this kind of like a kind of pointed look with a wider base, but at the same time you want it to seem like, you know, it's just a continuation of what we've been doing. So I'm gonna pull this line out here, and I'm just gonna kind of not exaggerate it as much on this side. Now right here, I'm going to use this as kind of a turning point here. All of these kind of curve down. Now I'm going to kind of allow things to start turning the other direction, similar to this little spot right here on my diagram. You see how I'm leaving this center area open. You can think of that as like a hole in a mint if you want to. But we're going to come back and use it for value. Pretty simple pattern, pretty straightforward. All right, now that I'm curving back around towards the bottom here, I can go a little thicker, and I might just leave this area open, or, you know, I could come in, do another more straight one. That's really up to you. Make sure that my curve is continued. All right. So yeah, kind of got this like tiger striped kind of mint look. This is a good time to take a second. I'm going to erase my pencil lines out of here. Get my dust away. You can kind of see what this looks like with no lines. So this one is all about the shading. And if you look at what we got here, we have a heavy shade on the bottom, as well as kind of in this central point. So you could think of this as being hollow, or you can think of this as a divot, and that's really up to you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my graphite, I'm going to run it along this edge here at the bottom. Now this would be an implied line because I went ahead and erased everything. All right, I'm just going to put a little graphite down here. Now once I have this, I'm gonna kind of work and smear it up a bit, just so I get a nice kind of blend. And I'm gonna try to, when I blend it or smear it up a bit, I'm gonna try to go with my lines that I made, those cross contour lines. They're pretty important. So and I'm going to do the same thing on this interior edge here. So I'm going to kind of go around the edge here, and I'm going to take these lines and I'm going to pull them up a bit, trying to mimic these stripes I drew. Right, because this would be an area of value. Okay. Now, once I've kind of went in and kind of blended a bit of my grays in, I'm going to come back in with my pencil, and I'm going to work a darker line into the area closest to the edge, because this is the area that would get a little bit less light. And I'm not going to really blend it so much as I am just going to kind of like let it sit a bit, let it just kind of be. So you're going to let this value kind of define the edge here. You may have noticed I switched over to a set of gray markers here. This is just to show up a little cleaner on the cameras. Because I think it gets my point across here. A little cleaner. All right, but that's pepper. It's a pretty interesting one. I think it looks a lot like a mint. which kind of is cool, I think. And you know, if you drew a couple of these, you know, they could cast shadows down. That would really be up to you, however you decide to kind of fit that one in. But yeah, there's Pepper. Starting with those curved lines, continue adding, come in, add those values. All right. Now, the next one here is called Ynx. And Ynx is a pretty interesting one. It is very much a floral type pattern, and we've had these before, and we have the ability to stack them like we do for everything. We have auras around them. You may or may not want to do that. Um, but a Ynx is kind of like a pointed flower. I know this one may look like a piece of wheat, but if we come in, I want to show you kind of how this looks. I do recommend drawing this with a pencil first because it can be difficult. So you can make a line first if that helps you. But I've just been kind of going for it here lately. So these are kind of pairs. They're kind of rows. So I have two, I have two, I have two. It's not supposed to like stair step so much. And I'll tell you that kind of once you get into a rhythm with this one, it's much easier. It took me a while to kind of like get into a groove with this type of flower. Or fern leaf. It's very much kind of like that. Sorry for the noises in the background, if you can hear them. Now, as I'm getting closer to this kind of end point that I've drawn for myself, I'm gonna get a little smaller and a little smaller, and then I'm gonna end it with just kind of this point on this upper leaf, right? So everything kind of like comes to that point. Now that I have it in pencil, I'm gonna come back in with my marker, and I'm just gonna make this happen. All right, full send. Coming back to that center line, if you will. Find a rhythm. Some of you will probably approach this fairly cautiously. Some of you will probably just jump in. And both of those options are correct. You know, and if you found an area you didn't like so much when you were sketching it out, you know, you can always change it up a bit now that you have it all completed. Kind of like a weird little spot there I did, but that's okay. And my last little leaf. Right, so I'll come in and erase my pencil lines here. Right. And now this one, it can get an aura if you'd like. Meaning it has its own little space here that it exists in, kind of pushing everything else away. So you can make this kind of a centerpiece if you'd like. You know, and if you don't want it to have an aura, that's fine too. You know, this is your thing. Right? And if you wanted to add a second one behind it, try not to pull that off the screen. Probably could have made that a little wider, but that's okay. You know, this is yours. So you can kind of play with it, stack it however you'd like. and that's Ynix. If you want to get on kind of the value on this, I just like to think of things being a little darker close to the base and a little lighter as we get further out. So I'll probably put some graphite down kind of close to this stem here as I work, and then I'll shade some of that out over these petals or leaves. Yeah, you could also go back to like the braid one. You know, maybe your aura is darker. You know, maybe this is lit and you put like a nice dark aura around it, and then I'll come back and add a little more value right here along that edge that isn't blended out. You know, but that's up to you. However you want to kind of set this up. All right. So that's the second one, Ynix, and you could really fill a space with these if you'd like, or you can treat them as kind of like edge pieces that kind of flow off the paper to design. All right, and that is Ynix. Last one, probably one of the more complicated looking ones, but actually not super complex, and it's called the Squid because it kind of looks like a squid. We're going to start this one by drawing 7 dots. So we'll start with one in the center and do one on each side, and then just like that, kind of like a honeycomb, like the cereal. And then in between each of these dots, we're going to create a petal like that. And I'm just going to turn my paper as I do these, and you can let this thing curve and ebb and flow however you want. It can be longer, skinnier. It's really up to you. And this kind of looks like a starfish almost as I do it. Right, you can definitely see it's already looking fairly floral. Okay, now I made my full circle. So now I'm going to go back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second layer where they're all kind of going this direction, and a third layer where they're all kind of going that direction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these same starting points, almost like here there is this petal, and then kind of behind it there's another petal that kind of goes back behind it. So I'm going to do my ones going all this direction first. It doesn't have to cross over into another petal's territory, but it can. You know, they can be longer, they can be shorter. There's a tinier one, right? We're just kind of going to let it be a little natural, all right? So now, each of these points has 2 petals, okay? And I need to do one more, and I'm going to try to force these to go the other direction. That way it all looks nice and filled in. So I'm going to start with the same petal I started with last time. Right, so it's back in behind that first one. And I'm going to turn my paper going the opposite direction this time. Now here I'm in a weird spot. So I have one kind of going this way and one going this way. So if I wanted to, I could let this one go in the center, and I might do that. But I want one that's like that really plays with other petals. So I just went for it. Yeah. And one more here-ish. Just let that one be really behind. Okay. Now that I have I've got 3 layers of petals here. I got quite a bit. I'm gonna go back behind them, and I'm gonna create these little more of these little pods for these little balls. So I can start this by extending what I have out one. And then I'm going to kind of think of this as kind of the same pattern continuing. There would be one here, but I can only see part of it. And there's another one there, one there. There would be one here. So there'd be one there. I'm going to do a couple levels of that. Just to really, I want it to look like a larger circle kind of behind it. One here, so one there, one there, one here. Yeah. So I've kind of got this this kind of circle shape here. Definitely could add a little more there. So kind of fill it out, you know. So now I have this kind of ball. I can imagine these as like little pods where maybe little seeds are. And then you have these nice little kind of tendrils sticking out. And you know, if you're not happy with the number of things, you could always add more. You know, there's nothing saying this can't be more crazy or less crazy or more elaborate. You can get wild with this if it's what you want. It's what you want. All right. Now, when it comes to shading in the squid, one of the important rules is you're going to leave those first 7 little balls completely blank. That's kind of where the highlights are going to be for this guy. So we're going to make sure that we leave those alone. But it is a really good idea to put a nice light gray on all the other balls to show that they are further back in distance. This is going to help us achieve some space and some dynamic looking designs here, and is going to allow us to focus a bit on our main ones, right? And also, if you wanted to add a little graphite on some of these kind of backing flowers or leaves, petals, sorry, and leave some of the more front ones alone, you could do that. You could also shade in a bit where things overlap, right? Like it's catching a bit of shadow there, right? Because we have that overlap. We had that Hollenbach a while ago too. That kind of did that. Right, and then if there are any areas you want to come back in and get a little darker, you can definitely come back in and add just a little bit of depth and value in. Just add a little bit to these little balls. Maybe just a smidge on these petals. Right, so not super crazy, although it looks like it looks pretty delicate, but it's really not too bad. Yeah. So and if you wanted to gray, you know, some of these more forward petals, you can always kind of go in and mimic a line to get some more of that cross contour feel to it, just so that you have a little bit of consistency. Okay, and then a squid, not a super complex one, even though it looks crazy. And then we got Ynix and Pepper for today. So I can't wait to see what you guys do with these. Pretty excited to play with them myself, and I'll catch you guys next time. Be good.